In that instant, when this old guy looked up at me, I realized who he was. I slammed the door in his face and screamed to Murray, "Oh my God, girl! It's Sammy Davis Jr."
Hello, Black Hole. See this brother winning, man. Hey, R.E. Hey, look, what is your win, big? What is your win, big?
Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com. Today's looky would be our honeybee wigs. Baby, these things are in pre-order and they're going to be less than what you see over there on the Instagram. Also, our 640 bar ring and our fingertip ring. And if you are not already a part of our book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube, and for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes you, can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's continue talking about, what's the name of this book, y'all? Deliver Us from Temptation, the tragic and shocking story of the Temptations and Motown. Diana had just flown in by helicopter from Atlantic City, where she had been performing at one of the top casinos. By now, it was so late and the day had been so long that people had already begun to leave their seats. Diana was just in time to make her grand entrance for the closing number of the show. With what she tried to pass off as casual breathlessness, she took the stage and started to sing the Foreigner song. I want to know what love is. Hey, hey, I want you to show me. Her voice sounded raspy, thin, very high, and off key. She had to do several takes because she apparently did not know all the lyrics of the song. The taping was followed by a formal dinner of soul food in a huge tinted schoolyard behind the Apollo. Look, there's Barry and Diana, I warned Mary Wilson as I caught sight of the duo across the room. You've been spotted, girl, I whispered to Mary. Mr. Gordy kept moving towards us with Diana slightly behind him, looking worried over his shoulder. Why? What are you worried for? Barry the Gordy, what you worried for? What you think Mary Wilson gonna smack you in the face or expose your bitch ass? What must have taken but a minute seemed like an eternity. Finally, Mary Wilson and Barry Gordy were face to face. Mary, you look wonderful tonight, said Gordy, extending his arms with a smile. That was all. He gave no indication of being even slightly annoyed that Mary had had the nerve to show up. Mary, however, didn't return his politeness. Well, Barry, she hissed, how did you expect me to look? Old? Like you? Hi, Diane, Mary said breezingly. How are you? Hi, said a wide-eyed Diane from over Gordy's shoulder as she flicked her fingers through her wild mane of hair, and then tugging at his arm, she quickly said, let's go, Barry, and they were out of there, leaving a smiling but mute Mary encircled by a pack of stunned photographers. Yeah. I guess she was like, oh, I'm going to give it to you, nigga. I ain't seen you in a minute. But today, I'm going to give it to you. And Diana Ross had to go. She had to go back to the Barry, She got to remind Barry as to why he lost her and what he lost. 2 weeks after the Motown taping, Daryl Hall and John Oates, a top white pop duo, would perform to benefit the NAACP. Y'all tell me y'all favorite Hall & Oates song. Mine is Easy Going Being Twice as Nice. I can go for just repeating this same old line. You want my body now, you want my soul. Hey, don't even think about it, girl. Say no, go. I do almost anything that you want me to. Yeah, that's my shit. Hall and Oates are considered pioneers of blue-eyed soul. White guys singing black music. Okay, them and the average white band. If y'all have any other group that you feel are the pioneers of blue-eyed soul, then let me know. But I know it's the average white band, that lead singer. Who is that? Michael McDonald, okay. Who else? The Harlan Oates. We know the Robin Thicke. We know. Okay, and who else? Even though is his eyes blue? I don't know. Okay, but who else do y'all believe is one of the pioneers? Because Robin Thicke is not the pioneer. I'm just saying that that's what he do. Okay. Oh, and we always forget about this dude right here. It's not John Legend. Who's that white boy, y'all? That was before Robin Thicke. His name is John something. I forget his name. Put it below. Help me, y'all. I had not intended to see Hall and Oates, and I probably would never have noticed Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin names splashed across the Apollo marquee right under Hall and Oates. I jumped out of the limo without even waiting for the driver to stop and ran into the building, busting right through the doors to the theater. I could hear the Temptations music coming from inside. There were Eddie and David sitting in the front row watching the band rehearse. They looked as if they had just stopped in at an exclusive men's shop on their way from the health spa. I hadn't seen Eddie or David in a few years. We hugged and kissed, and I sat right down, ready for the latest gossip. David and Eddie were back. Now, instead of traveling in tour buses and staying in Fleabag hotels, they were riding in a vintage automobile straight out of a gangster movie. They looked like they used to look way back in the days when Motown really was the sound of America, when practically every record went gold, when it seemed like the good times would never come to an end. Ooh, that breaks my heart, y'all. Eddie and David began to fill me in on what had happened. The story started back in the 60s at the Uptown Theater in Philadelphia. Daryl Hall and John Oates were playing in a band that opened for the original Temptations. Both Hall and Oates had always loved the Temps. In fact, they'd always claimed to have been brought together by this shared musical passion. Daryl Hall, in particular, had been fascinated by their music and started to hang around them. In time, Hall grew very close to Paul Williams, who would once in a while give him his old stage outfits to wear. I never knew that. 20 years later, their heroes from the original Temptations were split up, scattered and struggling. Although Hall and Oates were big stars, Hall had become something of a recluse, often hiding away on his estate in New York. He needed a boost, something to get him excited about performing again. They decided to spice things up by reuniting the living original Temps, Melvin Franklin, Otis Williams, David, and Eddie, and bring them out on the road. As the story goes, Hall and Oates first approached Otis, who declined the offer. Ain't nobody here to see you, Otis. After the 1982 Temptations reunion tour, he had had enough of Eddie and David. But Hall and Oates were not interested in working with just Otis and Melvin. See, they were in particular fans of David Ruffin, not only as a performer, but also for his bad boy reputation. So Hall and Oates offered Eddie and David the deal that they had originally planned to offer all four Temps. Eddie didn't hesitate, but David wasn't sure. Despite all of that, the Apollo show was a huge success. During the following months, I was kept very busy working for Mary Wilson. She was doing okay, though not as well as she would after her book Dreamgirl reached the bestseller list in 1986. That's when she started getting better paying, higher class gigs, including one opening for Bill Cosby in Atlantic City. I'll never forget. Bill Cosby, do you want to Mary Wilson? Or did you to Mary Wilson? Why are you looking out for her like that? I mean, I know it's your good in your good graces, but I mean, come on, guy. What's going on with you, Bill Cosby? Mary Wilson, did you hunch the Billy Cosby? I'll never forget that night. Mary and I were in her dressing room when a security guard knocked on the door and announced that a Mr. Davis would like to see her. I said, who the fuck is that? Mary didn't have a clue who this Mr. Davis was either. So I poked my head out the door and waited until I saw a tiny, decrepit man with a cane hobbling down the hallway from Cosby's dressing room. I quickly shut the door and waited for him to knock. When I opened it for him, I had to look down on the man. That's how short he was. In that instant, when this old guy looked up at me, I realized who he was. I slammed the door in his face and screamed to Murray, "Oh my God, girl, it's Sammy Davis Jr." Murray came running out of the bathroom screaming, dressed only in a pair of black fishnet nylons and a long black taffeta evening skirt, and ducked back again while I opened the door and called to her, "Mary, Mr. Davis is here to see you." She waltzed back into the room, still completely topless. I just about died. But Sammy smiled and said, "What a great way to greet someone." Mary Wilson, put your pussy up, girl, or your titties up. Girl, what he gonna do? What he gonna do with you, Mary Wilson? They don't have Viagra back then. And from what I understand, B00ger, that don't make it ready. That make it not ready. She walks back in the room, still completely topless. I just about died. But Sammy smiled and said, "What a great way to greet someone." As Mr. Davis proceeded to offer Mary a few lines of boogity sugary, I just stood in shock at the sight of her snorting B00ger, bare-breasted in front of an aging Sammy Davis. Although in 1985, Mary wasn't as successful as Eddie and David were rapidly becoming, she was working hard and keeping me busy. I could only wonder how things were going for Eddie and David, and whether David was about to go off into one of his drug binges as he tasted success. Wherever they went, Eddie and David were given superstar treatment. Hall & Oates supplied them with just about everything they could possibly need. Years after their Motown heyday, Eddie and David were once again being treated as if they were someone's treasure. Despite all of this, Hall & Oates label RCA offered Eddie and David a recording contract to do their own album. Eddie told me that some songs were recorded over and over again before the album was finally mastered. David didn't like anything they were doing. He didn't like the songs. He didn't like the arrangement. He didn't like the background singing. He didn't like anything. "Tony," he told me, "RCA is giving us no control over any goddamn thing on this album." When David showed up at RCA with songs under his arm that he had written, produced, and recorded, the company refused to put them on the album. They said they were too radical, too black. Both he and Eddie complained bitterly that the company was looking for too much of a white pop sound. RCA, who had been very patient, now counter-complained that Eddie and David should wake up and be happy with what they were getting. I mean, that might be true. Me, if I was struggling like them or, going through what I was going through at the time with them, man, I would sing "Mary Had a Little Lamb" so I could pay my goddamn bills. I don't get that. Pride, man, pride. In some places, there is no room for pride. By the time the album came out, the record company had written off David and Eddie and did nothing to promote it. By the end of it all, everybody felt like they had been ripped off and used big time. Just as Eddie and David felt used by Hall & Oates, Hall & Oates probably felt used by Eddie and David. The real tension now were between the two groups of temps. It was a glorious Mother's Day weekend in 1989. I was up from my new home in Florida, sequestered at the penthouse in New York, and busy working on my first book, All That Glittered, My Life with the Supremes. Now that I had quit working for Mary Wilson, my links with Motown were almost broken. I had left Murray in December 1987 after a long European tour during which she had grown so bitchy and abusive that I knew I either had to quit right then and there or I would be in jail for plunging a knife into that girl's chest. So after 2 years off the road, I felt as if I had almost left Motown behind. But I was learning that legends don't fade easy. I'd been thinking about that evermore a superstar attitude that nearly all the Motown artists I had ever known seemed to maintain, even in their least starry times, which in turn reminded me of a story involving the not so supreme Mary. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share the Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com for this honeybee wig, baby. Now remember this, the same people that you meet on the way up will always be the same people that you meet on the way down. My naysayers, my patron loves you, babies. Y'all have a good one.